Welcome to the session 9, Writing Cases with Multiple Parts and Case Questions for Debrief. This session is a part of the case writing program, the objective of which is to enhance executive capability and decision-making skills with in-company case studies. Last week, we carried out the session 8, which was on interviewing to gather in-depth information. These programs are being brought to you by METL Global Perspectives, www.metl.in. Dilemma Case Questions. The purpose of the case study is to impart learning. At the end of the case, there are always a few questions that need to be responded to by the reader. These questions are worded as protagonist thoughts, presented at the end of the case and aligned to the dilemma that is in the case study written right in the beginning. The dilemma and the case study's questions are the check and balance of the content of the case. 2 dots are required to make a straight line. For a case writer, the dilemma and case questions are like the 2 dots that are essential to detail the case study. While the dilemma is the overarching element, the case questions are the stepping stones that need to be responded in a step-by-step manner to get to resolving the dilemma. As most of the leadership and general managerial case studies are complex, this makes it possible to have a series of cases like case part A, case part B, case part C, and likewise. Each part to focus on one stepping stone as referenced above. An instance. For instance, an explosion in a factory required the entire section to be closed down for repair. Luck was on their side as no casualties were reported and 5 people had just minor injuries. The protagonist reviewed the situation and remembered that the working committee a few months back had proposed new processes to do away with any incidences of this kind. The new process implementation would require at least 10 months of work and a large amount of funds, while the old plant, with few more precautions, would be up and running in 3 months, at 1/5 the cost of the new process implementation. The dilemma. The protagonist thinks about the approach he should take, as he considers any bodily harm in his plant to be non-acceptable, and the organization takes pride in its safety culture. But there are always constraints. The new process, same output, quantity and quality would mean longer downtime, higher investment and interest burden without corresponding interest in revenues. If the market conditions turn unfavorable, they might find it difficult to service the additional loan burden. What should the protagonist do? How should he convince the board or the other higher-ups to think in a particular direction? Case with multiple parts. This particular instance can be broken into a case with 4 parts. Part 1 can be the company culture of safety and the incident happening. Part 2 can be the financial cost-benefit analysis of the modified old process and the new flawless one. Part 3 can be on leadership, vision, mission, and purpose, and the decision going by these guidelines. Part 4 on technology, global market, and innovation can be added. There can be a market which is existing for material produced from plants where a particular nature of processing or raw materials have been used. It is possible. That is where the market understanding comes in and deeper understanding of the environment and the industry comes in. Questions can accordingly be lined up. Types of debrief questions. Either these 4 parts can have questions at the end or in the end of the entire case. If it is written as one unit, there can be 4 questions that can be asked. There must be sufficient information in the case to respond to the debrief questions. The various case studies that I have written, there are 3 types of debrief questions that I have come across. First, diffusing crisis, immediate decision making required. Second, analysis of situation, thought through and calculations behind and making the decision. Third is future forecasting, projecting into the future, given based on certain situations and how they were handled now. All of these would require decision making at the end of the case, and that is to be kept in mind when the debrief questions are figured out. Diffusing crisis. Immediate decision making. This happens in a case where a crisis has to be resolved and quick decision making is required. There is time pressure and immediate decisions having grave impact have to be made. You can just think of it as a situation where doctors are trying to operate on a patient and they are not being able to figure out the real issue there, and they are just grappling, and they are grappling against time. That is what actually happens in this kind of a situation. Analysis of situation, thought through decision making. This happens when some data needs to be analyzed and the closure of a unit or a turnaround needs to be planned or a new unit investment needs to be approved. There is time at hand, but the direction has to be the correct one. This becomes challenging as the market conditions that seems favorable now can change in few years by the time the unit gets ready. So understanding this market and making a decision which is future proof is not going to be easy, because what will happen 3 years hence or 2 years hence by the time the plant has become ready is not so easy to forecast. What if the global borders are opened up and import is permitted in this particular category? There are many aspects to it. All of it needs to be there to be able to make this decision. Future forecasting, projecting into the future. A situation was resolved in a particular way and there were surprises that cropped up all along, which was handled. However, going into the future, these situations would create major bottlenecks. How can the organization develop capabilities to handle the unforeseen issues? This becomes a very tricky kind of a situation, and if there is a population thing or aspects which are outside the control of any individual, these kind of cases can then be written. A simple thing can be the external environment of wars and the impact on the shipping industry, and therefore the logistics cost increasing for organizations and the timelines being extended because more inventory has to be sea freighted through a longer route. All of this has significant cost implications, time implications, delivery implications. So how can one future forecast in a scenario where the global environment is increasingly uncertain and the raw materials or the finished goods have to move across countries? Questions, decisions, dynamics. In every case, the reader has to put on the shoes of the protagonist and make decisions. Whether they could comprehend the case, the complexity, the dilemma or not depends on the rationale they use for the decision making. If the decision just a result of the discussion between the team members and analysis, or is there something more to be considered at this point? When I have figured out case studies and when I have written them and when I have deployed these case studies in classrooms, I have seen certain very interesting human dynamics come into play in such a case study debrief. Though a case is not about groupthink or one member influencing the others, it is about the approach to make the decision. See, the situation has occurred already in the years before. Cases being written on this, but how are the readers going to analyze the case? What is the process that they are using to reach to the decision? That is important in the case study, because what happened is already known. The decision that the management took was already known by then. Was the approach the correct one? That is to be analyzed when the case analysis is presented. Or did the entire analysis get swayed by one ace presenter and others agreeing to the individual? So there are a lot of these complex human dynamics that pop up when a case is being analyzed, and As a faculty, one needs to be aware of that. Though this whole program is about writing the case, keep in mind the way the interpretation can happen by the readers. Questions at this stage? In the case that you're writing, what are the case questions? Do these case questions help resolve the dilemma step at a time? If not, what is the missing piece? Can your case be broken into multiple parts A, B, C? Message me with your queries and I'll try to revert as soon as I can. Reach me at saugata@metl.in. The next week, I will see you with the session 10, which is on the background information that needs to be provided for making a case study comprehensive and complete. Happy case writing!